I do want to start by formally acknowledging that I have been acting director for a year, but Paul Ortiz, who was the prior director, officially left UF as of June 30th, and I'm both humbled and excited to be formally acting director this year in a slightly different capacity than I was last year. There's a lot that we need to try to do this year for oral history, not least of which is actually hire a new director, because this is not a permanent gig for me, to be sure. We do have a search that we're launching in coordination with the Department of History that will take place during this academic year and with the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. And so it's going to be a great opportunity to develop a new vision for the program going forward. Paul was here for 15 years and really built on a very strong foundation that prior directors Sam Proctor and Julian Pleasance had built. And now we have this exciting opportunity to build the fourth story, as it were, on this house of the Proctor Oral History Program. So I'm really excited to be able to see what that leads to this year. I want to also thank the delightful staff and participants. Tamara Jenkins, who's over by the pizza table over here and who's been such a critical piece of the program over the last several years. And then we've got Deborah Hendricks, who's hidden around the corner. She stepped back. As soon as I said thank the members of the team, she stepped out of my sight of view. She's also been with the program for several years and is critical to all we do. Ronan Hart, who was with the program as a student, is now back as a program coordinator on one of our projects. Aga is one of our graduate students who reports here from the history department. And then Anna Hamilton is our assistant director, who does a lot of the day-to-day stuff for the center. And then we've got a number of other folks, students in the blue polos as well. Elio Alves over here on the camera is also one of our grad assistants from the history department. So got a lot of folks that you're going to hear from. You're going to learn a lot about what we do and some of the opportunities going forward. I also want to thank our supporters. So the Alvarez family, I know they couldn't be here today, but they're one of our supporters that help fund the student opportunities, the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, the Proctor family and the Proctor Fund as well. So we've got external folks who provide the resources to support our students on the opportunities that we have, and they're critical to the success of the program. I don't want to take too much more of your time because you have far more exciting people to hear from and more interesting things to hear about than what I'm blathering on to you about. So I'm going to turn it over to Anna and let her bring in the next folks here. So thank you very much for coming. Look forward to chatting with you during the event too. Anna.
Thanks, Matt, and hey again, everybody, or I'll say hey, y'all. And thanks again to Matt for his leadership in this time of transition at SPOHP. It really takes a pilot to help us through significant change. There's been 3 directors at SPOHP over the last 55 years, so that's quite a tenure and it's quite a culture. So we want to make sure that we're thanking him. My name is Anna. I'm the assistant director here at SPOHP. We're so happy to see so many friendly and familiar faces, as well as so many new folks. We're happy that you found us. I kind of think of our program as a unicorn program on campus. We are here to support you in the work that you're doing, and we also want to welcome you into the exciting stuff that we have cooking up. We have kind of a sampler platter of sorts today in terms of our projects that we would like to showcase and introduce you to. You'll be hearing from current SPOHP students and volunteers, as well as graduate students, and even again, Ronan, who is a postgraduate staff member with us now. Excuse me. So there are a range of ways that you can get involved with us, and I'm excited for you to hear from them about the incredible work that they are able to do. So without further ado, we'll get started with our program. And first, you'll be hearing from Lauren Manso, Madeline Flint, and Alyssa Knappen for the Florida Queer History Project, which was started at SPOHP in 2016. And they are a rock star team that has taken it in an exciting direction. They'll also be, I'm not sure they're going to mention this, so I just want to toot their horns and celebrate them a little bit. They'll be presenting at this year's Oral History Association Conference. They've been selected to represent SPOHP and this project, which is very exciting and a huge honor, and we're so thrilled for them. So I'll welcome y'all to the stage. and hand it over.
Hi, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Lauren Manso. I'm the project coordinator for the Florida Queer History Project, and I'm joined today by two fabulous volunteers.
I'm Madeline, Flint.
I'm Alyssa, Knappen.
So a little bit about the project. We're the Florida Queer History Project, as I mentioned. We're student-led by the 3 students you see here, hoping to expand and collaborate with other UF students. The project was started in 2016 by a group of students who believed that it was important to share stories and voices within the queer community in Florida with the public. And so we've sort of carried on this legacy that they've established, especially in tumultuous political times. So, yeah.
Okay, so for our main objective that we're working on currently, as Anna mentioned, we are preparing for the Oral History Association conference in October. So we are specifically speaking to a project entitled Stonewall for Us, which is about how drag is used as a tool of resistance. So we are interviewing drag queens, lawmakers, students across the state in Miami, Orlando, and Gainesville to kind of stretch different regions of the state to kind of assess how different queer communities across Florida approach resistance and activism differently.
So kind of going oh, well, here we've got some photographs. I forgot about this part. This is FQH in action. And then next, just some of our current projects. As Maddie mentioned, we've been working on a Stonewall for Us, which they will be presenting in Cincinnati. We've also been working on cultural conceptions of femininity, which looks at different cultural spheres within Florida's queer community and how they perceive femininity across racial, religious lines. We are hoping to open up the volunteer program again soon. We also would love to interview anyone who has anything to say about this. We're always open to new ideas, and the world is constantly changing, so we're constantly updating the questions that we're asking and the directions that we're going in. So if you're interested in doing an interview or in volunteering in the future, you can go ahead and scan this QR code or email any one of us.
You can also just come up to any of us and speak if you're curious at any point during the open house. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, y'all. Next, I would like to welcome Ronan Hart, who is our project coordinator for the Network to Freedom Underground Railroad Oral History Project. Not quite 2 years ago, SPOHP was awarded a collaborative agreement with the National Park System to document stories of freedom seekers and freedom conductors' descendants related to the Underground Railroad. We will be conducting 50 interviews, and we're in the middle of that. It's an exceptional project. I won't steal Ronan's thunder, so I will welcome him and let him tell you all about it.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Anna, for the introduction. My name is Ronan Hart, and I'm the coordinator for our Underground Railroad Oral History Program. I actually started at SPOHP as a volunteer back in the summer of 2021 on our Mississippi Freedom Project, and that was my first exposure to oral history, and I really fell in love with doing it in the Mississippi Delta. So there's me with longer hair and no mustache. And I was fortunate enough to get a part-time job as a student researcher at SPOHP that fall, and I got to work on lots of different projects, including URP last summer when I was still in my master's degree. Again, thanks to the National Park Service for this project. When it started, I got to go to Ohio, to Detroit, to Bradenton, Florida. At the same time, some of my colleagues were going to Maryland, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, Atlanta, even California to do interviews for this project. So in all these locations, we are interviewing people whose ancestors had either escaped enslavement or had some role in helping others do so. This for me, it's especially cool because my academic research has focused on the 19th century, which was a long time ago, and it's kind of hard to do oral history about something that happened 200 years ago. And yet, here's this project where I get to interview people who have these family stories or have done this research into that history, and have all these stories of their ancestors escaping enslavement and going on these journeys. So this project has been funded by the National Park Service, specifically their Network to Freedom program, which is dedicated to honoring and preserving the legacy of the Underground Railroad. So I've gone to meet and work with some really amazing people from the Park Service, as well as just local historians, educators, the people who are doing the really hard work of public history outside of, an academic space. Since I have come onto this project as coordinator this last May, I've had the chance to connect with and work with even more of these amazing people. But the stars of the show really are the narrators for the URP project, who are just so knowledgeable about this history and who have taught me so much already. Most of them are not trained as historians or as academics. A few of them are, but for the most part, they're teachers, business people, engineers, artists who just got interested in their family stories and became historians by doing that research into their genealogy. So the stories that they've uncovered are really incredible. I'm sure everyone here probably knows about Harry Tubman and Frederick Douglass. You probably have an image of the Underground Railroad as like an enslaved person in the middle of the night, leaving a plantation and trying to go to Canada. That's like the usual story, and that is very similar to the story that a lot of these people have told, but there's also so many other stories with entirely different dimensions to them. So there are people like Robert Smalls, who was enslaved near Charleston, South Carolina, and at one point in the middle of the Civil War, commandeered a Confederate naval vessel called the Planter and sailed himself, his family, and other enslaved people down the river out to sea, past Fort Sumter, straight into the Union blockade, where he promptly enlisted as a sailor. It became the first African American in the U.S. Navy to command a vessel, the same ship that he had escaped on. So really remarkable story. And getting to meet his descendant, who we'll hear from in a clip shortly. I didn't meet him, but I listened to the interview. Needless to say, it's really cool history. I'm just happy to be working on this. And now as coordinator, trying to plan future trips up to New Bedford, Massachusetts, which was a really important hub for the Underground Railroad, to Kansas and Delaware. So that's what we have coming up. With all these interviews that we're going to conduct, the ones we've already done, we're trying to create educational materials, multimedia projects, podcasts. Recently, I've started posting about one of our interviews, a clip from one of our interviews every Thursday on our Facebook page. So follow the SPOHP Facebook page to see those. Every interview that we've done is on the SPOHP YouTube page. They have a whole playlist. Check those out if you're working on any kind of research project about this. It's a really excellent resource. And if you have any other questions about URP, just find me. I love to talk about it. And like I said, I'm going to leave you all with a clip from one of our narrators, Michael Moore, talking about his ancestor, Robert Smalls. So.
Robert said, look, this is our chance. And he got the other enslaved crew and their families, got his family. He put on the top hat and the long coat of the Confederate captain. It's the middle of the night, it's dark. Because Robert was the pilot on the Planter, he knew there were 5 forts that he had to sail past. He knew the various passcodes, like passwords, with the ship's sort of horn, I guess, or whistle. And he sailed past. He sailed past all 5. The last fort was the biggest and most dangerous, was Fort Sumter, which was where the Civil War began, the first shots of the Civil War. And I've often thought, I wonder what they must have felt like as they were approaching Fort Sumter. They had already passed 4 forts. They could probably see freedom, off in the horizon, but they had this enormous obstacle in front of them. But Robert skillfully executed the passcode, and they kept sailing. They kept along the path that typical Confederate ships would sail on. until after they got past the range of the cannons on Fort Sumter, and then they quickly veered south, heading toward these Union ships. And as the story goes, Robert planned this really intricate, there were so many details, so many things that could have gone wrong. And by the way, this was a life or death kind of a proposition. If they had failed, they'd line the bottom of the boat with dynamite. They were going to blow themselves up because they knew that if they got caught, they'd be tortured and killed in a probably particularly sort of violent way. And so they all agreed, like, either we get to freedom or this is it. And so, again, I always thought, like, a couple things. One, it's one thing to know how to sail a boat in the middle of the night, through a complicated harbor. It's another to do that really with your life on the line. And if you make one mistake, that could be it. And so in any event, to make a long story short, just really quickly to end, here's the ship, the Planter, which is one of the largest boats in the harbor, heading toward this Union ships, sailing this big Confederate battle flag, unannounced, in the middle of I think probably at that point, it's probably the sun starting to come up. And his wife, Hannah, who worked in the hotel, had actually had the foresight to take a couple of white bed sheets and to sew them together into what would be sort of the standard kind of the white flag of surrender. And they quickly lowered the Confederate flag, raised the white sheet of surrender as they approached the blockade, and they were free.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ronan. I highly recommend checking out Ronan's posts on our Facebook page with clips like these. Again, these are stories that have never been recounted before. And so the folks that work with this collection are the first people to hear some of these stories. They're absolutely remarkable. And we're grateful to have Ronan as the lead on that project. So next up, we have one of our graduate assistants, Aga. A fabulous way to get involved with SPOHP is as a graduate student. We do a lot of work with undergrads, but graduate students have a unique opportunity who are in the history department to join us as a graduate assistant. We have Elio here and Aga with us this year. We are so jazzed to have them. They're doing fantastic work. And it's an incredible way to get behind the scenes experience in an oral history program like ours. They do archival work, field work, processing. So I encourage you to talk to them once we're done kind of with our official program today, if you're curious to hear about what they do and about what opportunities like that looks like. So I would like to welcome Aga up to talk about a project that she's been working on and has expertly revived for SPOHP.
Thank you, Anna. This is my second year as graduate assistant. Last year, I started working with Art of Aging, which is our project that we inherited from medical students who just wanted to learn more about retirement community and the service that they can provide as a doctor. So basically, how to approach people, what are their problems at the later stage of life. Our goal was just to record the life stories, and that's it, as they were. So retirement communities in Florida, Florida, this is the space where retirement communities are the most known. This is the place to go when you are entering certain age, unless you are the university student as we are. And so two types, right? So Gainesville has this fabulous community, the Village. It's just on the outskirts. It used to be open field with beautiful lakes. Today, it's inhabited by, I don't know how many thousand people, many. So what we offer them is our community service, which means that people can sign up and declare that they would like to be interviewed. I had no idea what I'm entering when I stepped in with Deborah Hendricks and Anna on our first meeting with them. We were just like, okay, happy-go-lucky. And then here I was, completely unprepared, talking to a pilot who flew F-86, which is a bombing machine during the Vietnam War. I interviewed many people that had incredible life stories, completely incredible, life-changing. The one that we are presenting here, especially curated from our collection, with my colleague Mosumola, who is also a history graduate student, who is now doing great research on nursing school in Great Britain. We interviewed, among 20 other people, Benjamin Dial, who is a gay activist, single man today, writer, living in this community. Edith Blalak, my favorite one, who is widow of a war veteran, who was talking to us a lot about what does it mean to live with a person who suffers from PTSD. Elmer Nelson, a great pilot, wonderful man who actually introduced me to a very intimate world of aircraft pilots who are just a very, very special group of people. And Alton Kwanbeck, who is, I believe, 95 or 96 years old. His wife just recently passed away, and he informed us about what does it mean to live life after your lifelong friend of 65 years passed away. I think those stories are very special, unique. Everyone has one once you enter a certain age. But among those people, there is one superhero that I would like to introduce you to and make you aware of the treasures that we hold in our collections. So the person that you will listen just in 1 minute, her name is Joan Reeks. She's 90 this year. And to me, she's an absolute superhero. You never heard her name, right? We are here at the university who heard Joan Reeks. Doesn't sound familiar. She is the person who introduced food available for everyone to public schools at no cost. So if you graduated from public school and you didn't have to pay for food in cafeteria, it is thanks to her effort. In 1970s, she graduated from university, she earned her PhD, so she was prepared. What does it mean to provide healthy food? What is the meaning of food in a person's life? She also experienced Great Recession because she lived so long, so she was born in the right time to experience that, so she knew what does it mean when you, as a child, you are undernourished. So she understood what does it mean, at least in theory. But when she entered her very first job as a food counselor, she was really shocked and surprised to see how does it look in practice. So please pay attention.
I've been in a school in a small town in central Florida one day, and a little boy and a girl were not eating lunch. And I asked the principal, and the principal said, I said, could I buy them the lunch? And he said, no, the parents, you cannot buy. They do not want the parents. I said, well, could I buy just milk for them? He said, yes. So I bought them out of my own pocket some milk to drink. They had no food to eat. I've been in a school when another set of children, a little boy and a girl, had a headache, and they came into the nurse's office where I was in looking at the applications, free and reduced applications, and they had a headache. And I talked to the principal about it, and they had not eaten. And they said that the parents were punishing them and withholding the food. Now, this to me is child abuse. Pure and simple child abuse. And I just can't understand.
Of course, that was the moment when I cried. This is not what you normally do during oral history, so we had to pause for a second. The reason why we are telling you about this project, The Art of Aging, is because when you are becoming intern in our program, you also can conduct an interview with oral historians. So you can basically shadow oral historian, ask your questions, take participation in the whole process of becoming oral historian. So prepare, come, and then say bye, and then learn from Deborah Hendricks how we process interviews and what are the next steps before the interview is available online. So I just want to raise awareness for anyone who is interested in this. I think that this is your only opportunity to actually become oral historian that we can offer at the moment. So the internship is the one, and this is the project that you will be definitely introduced to once you will join us at SPOHP on the first floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Aga. Yes, as she mentioned, because of Aga's fantastic work and leadership on the Art of Aging in its current iteration, our interns, many of who are sitting in the back, if y'all will raise your hands as resources, head out and talk to them afterwards. We'll be able to shadow some of our more experienced students and researchers conducting this work. So in terms of learning oral history and gaining experience, there are many ways that we can help facilitate that. Okay, this leaves me. And one thing that I want to mention is if you're new to the program, it's worth noting that we have more than, I shouldn't say more, around 8,000 interviews, looking at Deborah for confirmation, in our collections. It's an incredible amount of voices and personal experiences that have been documented for decades. If you're interested in finding collections or poking around, we absolutely invite you to. We're happy to answer questions about the projects that we have. Many are accessible online through the University of Florida's digital collections at Smathers Libraries. We also have a ton in our archive rooms that are yet to be discovered. So we are an incredible resource and wealth of information for you. I want to mention that because there are a number of ways that students and faculty can get involved with the program. And we can talk about training and we can conduct workshops and we can help set you up and shore you up for your own research, grounded in oral history themes and methodologies. But we also have collections that are waiting for fresh eyes and fresh ideas in your scholarly research, in your creative pursuits. So if you have any questions or want to talk more about how to access that, or if you hit roadblocks, which happens with unfriendly looking databases, we are happy to help you navigate that process. If you're here, chances are that you're a student looking for information about how to get involved. Aga mentioned that right now, the best, and I think it's the best way to get involved with us is to participate in our internship. I will talk about the project that we're focusing on in just a second, but to give you a little bit more of a practical idea about what that looks like, it is a 3-credit course offered through the history department, so you can take it for credit. Right now, we have freshmen, sophomore, junior, senior, and graduate students in our internship. So it's a really lively and robust cohort across that spans all different ages and experience levels, and I think it makes us richer for it. So we welcome you to that. The commitment is about 10 hours a week. I say it's an internship, it's a little bit of a seminar in disguise, so just to give you a heads up, we do meet regularly and you become part of our SPOHP team and our SPOHP staff. You come to our staff meetings, you participate in decisions regarding the program, and you have fieldwork opportunities and training opportunities. So I think it's a really fantastic, intensive crash course that sets you up and really brings you into the SPOHP fold. That being said, I want to mention, and I think some of you are here to learn a little bit more about this, the Pensacola Environmental Oral History Project, which is the focus of this fall's internship and will be the focus of spring's internship as well. So if you didn't get to join us this fall, you still have an opportunity to do so in the spring. So the Pensacola Environmental Oral History Project was officially launched this last summer, 2024, although I think it's important to note that its roots are much, much deeper and build off of SPOHP's decades and decades of work and collaboration along Florida's Gulf Coast. So these are new interviews. This is technically a new project, but again, it touches on and builds off of work that SPOHP has been doing for decades. Because she's here sitting in the front row, I'm going to point out my colleague, Becca Burton, who I invite you to also talk to afterwards if she's sticking around. Becca is the coordinator for the Gulf Scholars Program at the Bob Graham Center. So SPOHP is up here physically. The Graham Center is our neighbor right here. And this project is very much thanks to you all and the work that Becca has done and that Matt has done to help get us off the ground. So the Pensacola Environmental Oral History Project is a little bit of an umbrella project. It leaves room for documenting stories of environmental change, of maybe climate change, of environmental degradation or restoration. So there's really a wide net that we can cast, but the focus now and the focus of the summer was and is documenting stories of Pensacola's Superfund site history. Does Superfund ring a bell for those of you in the audience? Is that a familiar term? Okay, there's some nodding. No shame. So the Superfund is a designation from the Environmental Protection Agency, and it refers to contaminated sites due to mining, manufacturing, other kind of like resource-intensive activities that have left toxicity in the soils or the waters, and they remain a huge threat to human and ecological health. Pensacola has a number of Superfund sites, all at different levels of remediation, and so we are documenting stories of resilience and community organizing in response to enduring toxicity. One neighborhood that we've focused on and one site that we've focused on that I want to showcase here in a second is the former American Creosote Works plant, which remains one of 5 of the most polluted Superfund sites in the country. And the community there, I should say, ACW operated from 1902 to 1981, and it was identified for cleanup in 1983. It still hasn't been cleaned up. Now, there have been a lot of updates since then, and even since we met with the community for the first time over the summer, but it remains this more than 40-year history of community struggle organizing for health and restoration. So students who are working with us in the internship now get a front row seat and actively work on this project with us. We conducted 4 interviews over the summer, and that's the tip of the iceberg. We're heading back again in November to conduct 10. So students will really be in the driver's seat to document these stories where there really isn't a coherent or cohesive archive around these stories and around this history that is happening in real time. So with that, I want to share one clip. Again, we're oral historians. We're nerds for sound, for first-person narrative, of one of the people that we interviewed named Dixie Wilkinson, who is a lifelong Pensacolian. Her family grew up in the Sanders Beach neighborhood. She was born and raised there. She still lives there. Her parents lived into their 90s. And as early as her 30s, Dixie started experiencing a number of dramatic health challenges. So she'll talk a little bit about that. And she has been one of the #1 drivers for this cleanup and for funding to really remediate this site. So I'll introduce you to Dixie.
Back in the day, when I was growing up, they didn't have it fenced. They had all the creosote poles. Every time it rained, the sheen would come down our road. You could smell it. You could see it floating, the oil. Our cats or dogs, back then, they didn't have leash laws and all that. They would go in this creosote pool that's on L Street, a little ways down that way, and go swimming or fall in it, and they come home, and we'd no gloves, nothing. We would bathe them, in the big tubs back in the day with soap, and we had no idea how dangerous it was back then. We tried to do a health study down here years ago. Back when I was 34, I had colon cancer. Had no idea, found it by accident because I had another tumor on my pancreas. It was benign, but testing for all that, they found I had a silent killer. I had no symptoms. So to me, I'm blessed to still be here talking to y'all. But I blame it all. I know I can't prove it, but I do blame it on what I grew up in, the environment I grew up in. I had this eye problem, all of a sudden, since '96. there's several people that died from different cancers around here that I knew when I was growing up, but they didn't think it was enough information, you know, to do a study down here or anything.
So Dixie lives 60 yards from the former American Creosote Works plant. You can see it from her front porch. She won't walk outside barefoot. She won't dig into the soil, and neither will her neighbors, because those contaminants, as you heard her say, kind of cascade through the neighborhood still to this day, even though the plant hasn't been operating since early 1980s. So while the focus of this project might resonate most strongly with environmental studies or sustainability folks, I want to make clear that environmental topics are at the cross-section of so many other issues. So don't let it deter you if you think, I think she's left, but one of my students the other day said, well, I thought it was environmental history, and then I realized it was all these other things, and it's so interesting. And I think she's right. If you're interested in social movements and organizing and labor history, systemic racism, environmental racism, you name it, there's something that touches this project in a very real and a real life way. So I invite you to talk to us about it, to learn more about it, and to join us for the internship and really help us amplify these stories that have never been documented before. I think that's my time. I want to end by saying we are all here because we really believe in the power of first-person narrative and in testimony and in human experience as a way to humanize history. History isn't just relegated to the history books. We are all part of that, and we have a real chance here at the Oral History program to expand that and to do it in service of community-driven work and our community ties. So I want to thank you all for being here. I don't know if Matt would like to say a few last words, but thanks for being here. We'll be on hand to answer questions. Make sure you grab pizza before you leave.
Thanks, Anna, and thanks to Ronan and Aga and to Maddie and Lauren and everybody for all of your work on these projects. I want to just conclude with a couple of remarks. First of all, on the Pensacola project, that's funded by our Gulf Scholars Grant, which the Graham Center is the lead on, but it's a campus-wide initiative to connect undergraduate students in particular with Florida's Gulf communities with the goal of helping retain, promote, build sustainable, and not just in the environmental sense, but also in the economic, cultural, political, and social sense, sustainable Gulf communities in this state. And it's funded through the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine with monies from the BP Horizon oil spill catastrophe from 2010. So that's an ongoing project. We also have money from the President's Strategic Funding, UF President's Strategic Funding, to support that initiative as well. So through oral history and in some other venues and avenues on campus, there are a lot of opportunities for student engagement where you can, again, go and participate in these kinds of projects. And again, maybe develop your own research project as well. And the oral history program, the Samuel Proctor Oral History Program, becomes a great vehicle to do that. The bigger picture, though, that I wanted to sort of paint for you is if you think about all those projects together that you just heard about, there are a couple of things that connect them. One is community, right? Every one of them is exploring communities and their histories and how the stories of the past connect to our present and also to our futures, right? And so that's something that we think about oral history with that word history, we tend to think about the past, but it's very much about connecting that past to our present and helping us think about our futures. Every one of those stories and projects that you were hearing about do that, right? That's a fundamental piece, not just of oral history, but specifically of the Samuel Proctor Oral History Program, which is very much connected to communities, locally, statewide, region-wide, and so on. So that's a fundamental piece. If you're interested in community and community engagement in different ways, the oral history program here is a way for you to pursue that. So I think that's really, really important to underscore. And our collections, existing and to come, represent that, right? And they represent avenues into those communities. We've got projects that nobody mentioned today. We've got a Vietnam Veterans Project. We've got a project that's very much focused on Alachua County history. We've got a project that is looking at UF and Gainesville upper administration and looking at UF's position in this community that surrounds this campus. So there's a lot of different things that you might find interesting in our existing collections, but also that might lead you to think about interesting projects that you might want to explore going forward. So again, I just wanted to sort of make those bigger picture points. We actually do have a representative from the Dean's Office here. I just want to thank the Dean's Office, Sean Adams, Associate Dean for the Humanities here. I did thank the college earlier, but I did want to acknowledge them as well. And again, we also have some faculty here. I see David Silkenat, new faculty in history. I see Miles Larmer, Director of the Center for African Studies over here. Glenn Kepik, who works in advising, but also leads a study abroad program that used oral history this past year in Austria. So there's a lot of different spaces on this campus that you can connect that are interested in oral history that might have you back here as well, doing a workshop. Maybe it's a class visit with some of our folks coming into your classes. So we hope you'll stick around, ask some questions. Again, get some more pizza. We want to make sure that you're well fed and everything. So thank you all for coming. We hope you enjoyed it. And again, please feel free to reach out, hang out, ask questions. Thanks.